may have looked at the title of the talk up on the board and thought, what the hell's that got to do with skills? And why am I being, if you like, to be subjected to this talk? What do I like to learn? Innovation? Isn't that science stuff? Well, bear with me, because I'm going to try and, in the next 25 minutes, to sort of start from innovation and work back to skills utilization. And Wallace did actually set me 3 questions. He didn't just say, come and give a talk. And he was wiser than that. He knew that if you wanted to get any value, you've got to set me a question. Question 1 is, what is skills utilization? The second one is, what impacts on skills utilization? And the third is, what is important in managing skills utilization? And I'm going to try and do that in the second half of this presentation. But before I get there, I want to try and locate skills utilization and indeed skills policy more generally in broader notions about innovation. I want to do that for a number of reasons, but I think the main one is because the work of my centre has always been quite influenced from the start. We've been running for 13 years now, funded by a large academic research council. One of the things that's driven us has been the work that Donald Shon did a long time ago in the early 80s around how you identify problems and deal with them in the real world. Shon had a particularly interesting idea about naming and framing. He basically suggested that you cannot solve a problem until you can name the problem correctly, i.e. you can determine what characteristics you're dealing with, and frame what other issues are bumping up against that particular problem and are influencing and creating. And much of the work of my centre has really been about trying to shift policymakers' perception of what the nature of this problem we have in the UK and many other countries is skills. And I suppose in short, our argument is it usually isn't really any more a problem around skills supply. Most of our problems are around core we actually demand skills. About the fact that having spent a lot of taxpayers' dollars creating skills, we don't use them very well. So with that in mind, I thought we could have a different frame. I think that you can locate skills in terms of both supply, demand and utilisation within broader notions of change, particularly organisational change. And in many Northern European countries, particularly Scandinavians, have very high quality products, very high quality goods and services. It will be seen as being integral to their notions around workplace innovation. That would be where they would start to frame this kind of policy. So the old model of innovation, which is a model that's very, very powerful in Anglo-Saxon countries, and is particularly so in England, would be around its scientific research, its universities, public laboratories, and a bit of private sector R&D. It's measured through how much money you input into it, the number of patents that are filed as a result of doing it, citation indexes for academic research, and so on. And therefore, the key public policy issues are about volume, distribution, spend, patent value, spin-off intellectual products and services. And insofar as universities and colleges, or what you would call TAFEs, have a major role to play, it's about knowledge transfer. It's about taking a lot of scientific knowledge, dumping it with a firm and saying, right, here you are, pick this up, here's how you could use this technology, this scientific breakthrough. Now, plainly, much innovation is about that. I mean, we're not denying for a second that that's not a valid model of innovation, but it's only a small part. So, in the UK, you get this model, and innovation equals science, science equals innovation. Therefore, more science plus better knowledge transfer equals more and better innovation. So it's very simple. The main problem, therefore, is inadequate knowledge transfer and research that's not sufficiently aimed at being commercialisation fit. So we've wasted huge sums of public money. We're not wasted, but we've certainly focused all of our public concern and our public spending in that area. And if you go to many other Anglo-Saxon countries, you go to New Zealand, I suspect similar debates go on in Australia. This is the thing that we focus on. But it is a very Anglo-Saxon debate. Because the foreigners do it differently, and they may have good reason for doing it differently. Their conceptions of innovation changed a long time ago, at least 30 years ago, in the case of the Scandinavians. And what's very interesting is that in the last 4, 5, 6 years, the OECD have started to shift their models of innovation. They're broadening it. They're saying we don't need to discard the hard science model, but we need to build many other things around it. And those broader definitions of innovation and then its impact on productivity, workplace performance, product and service design and delivery really have some profound implications for both policy and practice. And in a sense, it's giving that I want to try and locate skills utilization. So here's the new one. It starts with scientific and technical innovation, or we're on familiar territory there, product and service innovation, process innovation, and organisational innovation to support and deliver the above. And I suppose the interesting point to make about that hierarchy, or that list, is that the first one is plainly very often a top-down one. It's the expert coming and saying, I've invented X, here you could use it. The other 3 bullet points are more likely to involve bottom-up innovation. In other words, they are going to involve the input, the collaboration, and the cooperation of the broad mass of your workforce. And indeed, we know from study that much process innovation is incremental and is often driven by the thinking that's going on actually on the shop floor rather than in some R&D laboratory or in company or organisational courses. So there's how the Finns modelling, and that was written by a Finnish civil servant in Finland. There is a Ministry of Innovation, there is a committee, an innovation committee that meets regularly and which is chaired by the Prime Minister. The Innovation Ministry runs all kinds of innovation support. One particularly large strand of the innovation scheme, which used to be run by the Ministry of Labour, is solely around reorganising the workplace to increase its capacity to absorb new technology or to increase its capacity to engage in other forms of innovation. So if new technologies are to be adopted successfully, changes will also be required in working, organisational and management systems. So what they're arguing is that you have to bring together a whole variety of different resources if you want that broader model of innovation to work. So the Finns are not doing this for fun. They're doing it because they have extremely high wage levels for all workers, not just people who top. They have very high social costs. And unless their productive sector continues to be very, very efficient, achieve high levels of productivity and high levels of high value added exports, they will not be able to sustain the whole model around which their society runs. So in a sense, the government is very clear that they need to help make this run. This is a central part of their economic strategy. So they've put quite a lot of resources, and certainly a lot of effort into pursuing this kind of a model. Where has all this come from? Well, it didn't come out of thin air. It partly happened because the Scandinavians, although they have quite good scientific expertise, it's in fairly narrow sectors, and much of their industry is actually very medium tech. It's not tremendously high tech. It's genuinely not rocket science. It's things like fish farming, wooden furniture design, fertilizer manufacture, a whole range of sort of medium high-tech manufacturing in sort of particular niches, because there's a huge forestry industry in Finland. The best chainsaws in the world are also manufactured in Finland. But it's not very hard, high science end. And the Scandinavians recognise that with their huge social costs, they could not afford to take the low road. They've really got to keep on moving up. And therefore that's driven them to innovate in areas that are not necessarily hugely about scientific innovation. There's also been a spread of academic and conceptual thinking about innovation systems, and innovation systems thinking, which I don't want to go into this afternoon, but basically it says you have to get a whole series of broader things in place, not least the capability of the organisation to absorb new technologies and to think differently. And finally, and I think this is where the Scottish story would start to come in. In Scotland, there has been a gradual, but it's become quite a sharp realisation that Scotland has spent vast sums of money on education, publicly funded expansion of what you would call TAFE and higher education. Scotland now has a larger higher education sector than England, higher age participation in higher education, a more qualified workforce than England, and it has spent 17–18% of students more for 20 years on education. And yet its economic performance lags significantly behind England. Now there are some structural reasons for that, but it was plain to the Scottish Government about 5 years ago that they couldn't carry on like this. But they really had to start to try and maximise the benefits from that enormous public investment which had been sunk into creating a relatively highly skilled workforce. But they weren't getting the productivity or gross value added improvements they expected. And that really started to make me think, we've got to start to do other things, we've got to start to intervene. And that we need to try and make sure that having spent the money, we get some return on it. And that means making sure the skills get used. Now I think the strength of this kind of approach, saying, well, where the skills fit in with wider economic business development and innovation policy, is that you can begin to actually link up different elements of the support services that you're providing to firms, rather than have one set of people providing skills, another set of people providing business support, another set of people providing technical support for innovation. You can begin to bring those together. But that's what's starting to happen in Scotland. There will continue to be separate agencies, but there is an increasing interagency working around the Scottish Government's economic development strategy. And interestingly, that strategy has its incentive piece in the long term, 15 to 20 years, that Scotland becomes it comes to look rather like a Scandinavian country. So you get a new policy agenda. Well, all of those things, I'd argue, are broadly interrelated. If you can get those things to start to join up, you can actually begin to make interventions that can hit several of those different bullet points at the same time. And arguably the Scots, particularly I'd argue for the bottom three, are beginning to make substantial progress in what they're doing. But that is the policy agenda that's starting to arrive. And there's another reason, which is that if productivity, innovation, work organisation, job design, industrial relations, employee relations and skills are interrelated, then the challenge becomes designing interventions that can change the nature of the organisation's goals and how it aims to achieve them. It isn't about fiddling around at the margins with tiny changes to the way in which you train people within the organisation. It actually provides a much broader framework for trying to push or help organisations to move on to a high road of competitive advantage, or if they're in the public sector, a high efficiency, high quality delivery model. Work organisation really matters as well, because again, a huge raft of European Union research, which the OECD have been looking at with considerable interest in recent times, is that we know that it's precisely those forms of work organisation that are the most amenable to innovation, that also help to create workplace environments where there's lots of informal, semi-structured learning on the job, and there's also the opportunity to then use those skills productively. Now that's a virtuous circle, that if you can buy into it and create, you're really actually getting substantial benefits from what you're inputting into the organisation in terms of skills created in the publicly funded education and training system. There's strong research evidence now that those elements where work organisation helps to support innovation, learning and skill utilization are really very important. Now up until now there's been very little to look at in the UK, and the only practical example today is the Scottish Government Skill Utilisation Project. I don't have time in this presentation to talk about them in any depth, but I will be more than happy to answer questions. But there is the Scottish Government's Skill Utilisation website will give you very copious details of the many different things Scotland is doing. Basically, these are projects which are being led by TAFE and university and TAFE collaborations to go out into the workplace and help employers to redesign their work processes around utilising skills more effectively. And interestingly, there's one example in the care sector around supervisors and care homes. I'll talk about that more when I'm asking about that. Okay, right, well that's the sort of preamble, and it's taken a while to get you, but I think it's important. Now for what is this three difficult questions.